for 3 years on YouTube making zero money. I learned what SEO was. Some of my YouTube videos went viral, and this year we're on track to make $1 million.
Meet Emma McAdam. She is a marriage and family therapist who does mental health education with now over 1.7 million subscribers on her YouTube channel, Therapy in a Nutshell.
Let me recommend the YouTube formula. You need to know what your audience's problem is. You need to start the video with something grippy. You make thumbnails that are catchy. There's discovery, which is getting found, and the most important part of that is I am not Mark Rober, I'm not Mr. Bean. I'm not really like tons of fun, and I don't change the scene every 3 seconds. I'm like, hey, you have a problem? I have some information that might be really impactful for you. I'm not gonna clickbait you. I'm actually gonna deliver on that.
Her courses are for people that are struggling with anxieties to develop the skills to cope with these.
A lot of people just don't know what they don't know. And so with mental health, you see a lot of people who maybe have a diagnosis like depression or anxiety, and they perhaps believe that it's a permanent condition that they have. And I've seen over and over again how the right skills, the right interventions can actually change people's lives.
Emma, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, let's kick this off with what's your mission on this planet?
Yeah, so I really believe that a lot of people just don't know what they don't know. And so with mental health, you see a lot of people who maybe have a diagnosis like depression or anxiety, and they perhaps believe that it's a permanent condition that they have. And I've seen over and over again how the right skills and the right interventions can actually change people's lives. So I started making YouTube content just because I saw my clients in therapy that therapy is really expensive. It's hard to access. It's hard to find a good therapist. And I thought, wow, we could take the education part of therapy, make that asynchronous, make it easier to access, so we could help a lot more people. So
Love it.
that's what I do.
So before, like in your previous life, what did you do and what inflection point made you start your business?
Yeah. I worked in wilderness therapy programs and youth programs for about 8 years. And then I did my graduate degree in therapy. And then I worked in a residential treatment center for a couple of years. And then I got married and had my first kid. And I wanted to spend more time with her. So I quit. I quit and was just going to be a full-time mom. And I had 2 problems at the exact same time. This is my inflection point. I had 2 problems. One was I got really bored. Like intellectual stimulation, I was like lacking it. I was going a little bit crazy as a stay-at-home mom. And 2, I just kept having people ask me questions about mental health. People like my friends, my family, my neighbors, the people in my church, everyone was asking me these questions. And I thought, man, there's so much need. There's so much need for good education and good skills. And I have 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. every day. Let's do something with it. So.
Makes sense. Good segue to talk about today. So what's the, if you're a typical client of yours, what's the core offer that I would buy from you today?
What's the typical client that buys from me?
Yeah, let's start there. Like, who's the typical client and what's the typical thing that they would buy from you?
Yeah. So I think in general, people who are struggling with their emotions, people who are struggling with sadness, anger, especially anxiety and trauma, these are the main people who watch my channel. And they initially would maybe find me on YouTube and then eventually want to develop more skills. So they might purchase one of my courses, which are step-by-step guides with just tons of skills on how to process emotions or how to work through anxiety and break the anxiety cycle.
Very clear. So it's mainly on-demand courses, or do you also do some group coaching, one-on-one, done for you, done with you, in person?
Yeah. So I do not currently offer any group courses or any group coaching. I don't do one-on-one coaching on the internet. I still do a tiny bit of therapy here in Utah with individual people who generally don't know me from the internet. That's my preference. But I do that because I love therapy. So I really offer mostly on-demand courses. I work 15 hours a week and I zealously protect my time with my children. I have 4 girls. So I just limit myself like extremely to how many hours I work, which means I do 1 hour of live Q&A a month. That's my interaction with my audience.
Wow.
Plus, I make one YouTube video every single week, and that's my main interaction with YouTube.
Let's talk about these courses real quick. So what are the price points? Where does it start on the low end? Where does it end on the high end?
Yeah, my cheapest course is $19. It's a short journaling course. And my most expensive courses are $200, and they are 30-part courses. One's on processing emotions, one's on improving your relationships, one's on breaking the anxiety cycle. And one of the things I think might be interesting for your audience is I have, I mean, this is a business place. I'm going to talk money. I've made over $1 million selling my emotion processing course, which I also give away for free on YouTube.
Okay, let's have a click on that in a second.
Yeah.
Before we come to the success section, first of all, like amazing. If I were to interview some of your clients, what specific value in your offerings do they rave most about?
I get a couple different comments. We've been collecting reviews lately to make more landing pages, so I've been reading through them lately. And one of the main things is people say, "Oh, I was in therapy for years, and I learned more in your courses than I learned in therapy." And that's because there's different types of therapists, and some therapists are just listeners. They're really good listeners, and they're like, "Oh, how does that make you feel?" Where I'm like, "Let me teach you a skill that you can use." So that's like the number one thing is like I teach practical, applicable skills. And then the other thing people kind of really rave about is like, oh, you make it easy to understand. So I take like kind of complex psychological
Right.
ideas and I make them easy to comprehend.
Right. And to deliver that value to your customers, what tools do you use?
hmm I use videos. I mean, that's my main tool, but I try to make sure and tell a story in the video. I try and make lists, and I try to also have an emotional aspect where I help people understand the reason why they're doing something so that they
Mhm.
can understand how to fill that need with something that's healthier and more value oriented for them.
Take me on a timeline. When did you launch the business as is with the current offer stack of courses?
Say that again?
When did you launch the business as is with the current set of courses?
So we're constantly like evolving. I started my business in 2017. I worked for 3 years on YouTube making videos, making zero money. I was just interested in it. And then in 2020, things went my some of my YouTube videos went viral, and I launched my emotion processing course in 2021. And
Mhm.
then I added my how to break the anxiety cycle last year. But each year I've added like one course per year. So I've got 8 courses now.
Nice. So now let's talk about success. How many people have bought, or let's say a typical month, how many people are buying the courses? I don't know what a typical month is. May,
Mhm.
March, April.
A couple hundred people buy courses every month. So I've got a team of 5 people just to like put this in
Yeah.
context. But in an average month, we do about 25 to $35,000 in sales. I don't know the exact number of students that.
Okay. So let's say 30K.
Mhm.
Um, that is 30K a month. That's 360 a year. And then
Mhm.
over the years, like more than a million. Really cool. To
Well, and
understand.
so just to be clear, that's about 50% of my income comes from course sales, and then I also get revenue from AdSense, sponsors, and Patreon.
All right. And that's another 30K.
That's right.
Okay. So it's 60. So that's 720. That's close to a million. Really cool. And let's maybe to understand that better, if you come to understand growth, especially, how did you do a year ago? Was it like half of that, or?
Yeah. So and just to be clear, those are our average months, and then we run sales where our income is higher about 3 months. We do 3 sales a year, so our income is a little bit higher those months. We're experimenting with some new processes as well. But so I would say, okay, I can give you numbers for like the past couple of years, but 2021 was the first year like we went full time with it, and we made I don't know, around $250,000. And then the next 2 years, we saw a lot of growth, like a lot of initial growth in 2022 and 2023, 2020. And then this year, we're just kind of baselining it because we now have 4 children, and we're like trying to make it a little easier. So we saw a lot of initial growth in the years of 2021 and 2022, where like our audience was expanding kind of
Yeah,
exponentially, about 10% per month growth in 2022 and 2020.
amazing.
Yeah.
And like baseline is what now, like a year, like a million, then maybe almost a year, because it sounds like it's more than seven.
I think I think so yeah 2020 2023 we did about 850, and this year we're on track to make 1 million.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
um Amazing. A million is like 83K a month, so that's kind of like then the run rate. Okay, cool. um Perfect. Next one like would be to understand the expenditures as well in your business. So you said team of 5. Like, what are these? Who are these 5 people? Like, what functions are they doing? And then also, if I were to have the secret chat with your accountant, what are the biggest items on the cost side of your P&L?
Yeah. So our expenses are really relatively low. Our average expenses in a month are between ten and $15,000. Our team um, is we have an editor in the Philippines and a virtual assistant in the Philippines who are awesome, and we make sure to compensate them as well as we can with lots of bonuses. We think that we strive to run an ethical business and treat people
Yep.
well. Um, and they're great. I have my two sisters. One of them is my school manager, and one of them is my Instagram manager. And they're both
Yeah.
contractors. They're both full time moms, and they work handful of hours a week. So between those four employees, that's about $7,000 a month. We have a nanny to take care of the kids 15 hours a week. And then we have our expenses are generally software. So software is maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month at the
Right.
most. And then you buy a camera, you buy a laptop once in a while. And then we
Nice.
pay ourselves, and then we pay ourselves a salary, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, our goal is to not work forever. Our goal is to work for 5 years and save up as much as we possibly can so we can travel the world with our kids and be really present with our
That
kids.
sounds amazing. Let's talk about lead generation.
And live frugally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Let's talk about customer acquisition, lead generation. So how do you get eyeballs awareness about your offers?
Yep. So the top of our funnel is YouTube. I mentioned how we went from like, oh, I was doing this as a side gig for 3 years, and then finally went viral. I learned what SEO was in 2019. That kind of impacted like my discovery. So learning how to play to the YouTube algorithm, or finding what people like, is a really important part of my business. So the number one thing I do is I make one YouTube video every single week, and so that gets us currently about 3 million views a month on YouTube. I also have a podcast with like, I don't know, 120,000 downloads a month, but I don't really pay attention to that. And every time I rub my arm, I get that thumbs up signal. That's cool. The reactions on my computer. That's my top of funnel. And then I drive people toward my website, free lead magnets, free courses, free downloads, things like that. And then ideally guide them toward the paid courses.
How do you guide them from awareness to purchase?
hmm This is an area I definitely need to improve. I'm not primarily a marketer. But so like on YouTube, it's like, hey, links in the description. Let me tell you, like, I'll do a video on this, and I'm like, if you want to learn more, check out the course, links in the description. So they click on the link, go to my website, maybe sign up for a free course, like my free grounding skills course. It's about regulating the nervous system. And then within that course, I'm like, okay, this is like the baseline. This is like the very most basic things you need to learn. And you could check out my emotion processing course, which has 30 videos on this topic, and it's
Right.
much more in depth, and it comes with a workbook. So go buy it. That's my really
Right.
technical, complicated
It's actually
strategy.
quite smart to do this way because they
Mhm.
want more. They already have one thing, then they have more questions. So they buy the full thing. Um, what has been your secret to
Mhm.
grow and convert your audience?
Mhm. I don't know if I wish I had a secret. The best thing I can say is like I really focus on providing high quality information, and I try. I think I understand my audience very well because I did therapy for a long time. I know how to speak to people who are in this situation, and I try really carefully not to be salesy. I think for my brand that won't work. If your therapist is like, "Hey, but buy this," like, "Oh, it's really urgent. You have to have a countdown timer." People are like, "What are you? You're like making me feel uncomfortable." And so I try to know my audience well and be like, "Look, I think this will really help you, and I think it's going to be worth your money. You don't have to do it, but you might like it. So give it a try."
Before we continue, there's one favor I would like to ask. If you enjoy what we do here and you enjoy the guests that we bring, please join $1 Million Creators by hitting the subscribe button. And if you do, I'll make you a deal. I do everything in my power to make this show bigger and better for you. Do we have a deal? Enjoy the show. Really quick double click on YouTube SEO because you said earlier like that's really something that you have to become proficient in. How
Mhm.
does that work? How do you know what video to produce next?
Yeah. Um Okay. So, like, understanding SEO at its basics. Are you talking about YouTube discovery? Man, we like there are books on this which I have read. So like let me recommend the YouTube formula if someone really wants to dive deep. Daryl Eves has some great webinars on this. The basics of this are you need to know what your audience's problem is. You need to make a title and a thumbnail that catches their interest and says, "Oh, that might apply to me." You need to start the video with something grippy that has a hook that like lets them know like this is important or this is interesting. My channel's not primarily entertaining. Like I am not Mark Rober, I'm not Mr. Beast. Like I'm not really like tons of fun and I don't change the scene every 3 seconds. I'm like, "Hey, you have a problem? I have some information that might be really impactful for you, and I'm not going to clickbait you. Like I'm actually going to deliver on that, and that keeps people engaged in the video as long as possible. So when you look at the YouTube algorithm, there's discovery, which is getting found, and the most important part of that is recommendations. YouTube recommends videos that have a high click-through rate and high audience retention, plus engagement. So you make thumbnails that are catchy, but then you have to keep your audience involved if you want YouTube to know that, like, oh, this person had a problem, they clicked on your video, they liked it long enough to keep watching. We're going to recommend this to more people who are interested in that same problem. And so, really, the algorithm is about what does your audience like, not what does the algorithm like. It's not actually as secret as people think it is. It's
Yeah,
just really about understanding your customer avatar.
very clear. Just real quick before we move on, you really cracked YouTube from like nothing a few years ago to 1.7 million.
Hmm.
TikTok 1,400, Instagram 31K. Like, what about the other channels? And like, do you would recommend like focus on one channel and go all in? Do you plan to go on the other channels as well? Like, what's your growth
Right.
strategy? Like, let's talk about the future a bit as well. Like, what's your growth strategy to what's the biggest potential channel and how to grow further?
I constantly have hopes and dreams of like making short form content because clearly that's direction content's moving. I also have a very realistic view of how many hours I have each week and how I want to use them. So I'm incredibly values oriented on how I use my time with social media and with any kind of business. You can always do more, 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 more.
Yeah.
So I've chosen the 80-20 rule. 80% of my traffic comes from my YouTube channel. That's where 80+% of my time and energy goes. I love YouTube personally. Like I love learning on YouTube. I watch documentaries on YouTube. I watch self-help on YouTube. Like that's my place. I understand it. Now, when my kids are all in school and I have 40 hours a week, we will be making short form content. But I'm just super like laser focused. I'm like I
Makes
can't do
sense.
it all. I can't do it all. So I'm going to very selectively choose what I will do with my 15 hours a week. And that's
Can
one
you
YouTube video a week. That's it.
can you triple the business from 1 million to 3 million in the next 12 months? And what strategy or tactic will get you to that massive growth?
We have seen a slowing in subscriber like growth. We generally get 30,000 subscribers every month. I think if I published twice a week or 3 times a week, and if I did more live feeds, and if I did longer videos, and if I did more short form content, I guarantee you I could do that. Like short form content, longer videos, live stream, and more content. That could make me double in size, but it's not worth it to me right now.
Yeah, clear. Um, what's the biggest thing holding you back personally on the unlocking the next level of business?
Hmm. I was just talking with one of my mentors about this, and she thinks it's that I'm kind of afraid of making too much money. I am kind of. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I feel like I'm very conscious of poverty around the world. I've lived in Palestine, I've lived in Russia, I've lived in South America, and I'm not necessarily driven by becoming rich. And so I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of that. And so that's perhaps holding me back. How's that?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think a lot of like business growth is personal mindset ultimately,
Yeah.
right? And once you, I don't know, find a vehicle, or I don't know, to give back, or I don't know what it could be, right? There's like lots of solutions to that. You might actually create more motivation to grow. Um,
And I think I could grow in a lot of ways that aren't financial, and I'd feel really excited about that.
yeah. Next section is called favorite five.
Hmm.
It's a fast-paced section. You can answer in one word. Let's go. What's your favorite book or business book?
Mm. uh, Leadership and self-deception.
What's your favorite way to get inspiration and to learn and grow?
Hiking or climbing.
Oh, even bigger than YouTube then. Okay, makes sense. What's your favorite person or role model that you're studying?
Um, Jesus Christ.
Bold. What's your favorite event or conference that you have attended or would love to attend?
Hmm. Now, I'm sorry, this is the long answer, but I have 4 kids. I often turn down conferences. Some of the best conferences I've been to are like my favorites are like trauma therapy conferences.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, how do you make sure that you get inspiration for your business? You said earlier like coach, right? So do you have like coaches, masterminds that you join? Do you go anywhere in person, or essentially you're like cocooning at home?
Currently, I'm pretty cocooned. This is the year where I'm trying to expand more, and like I've been a little bit burned out. So I'm like, okay, let's get more people in my life. Let's get more feedback. Let's get more support. Let's get more time to like hike. I was recently invited to a mastermind group full of a bunch of other creators that I am like loving. That's been really helpful. I've made a small like collab group with other mental health only creators. Some of them have like 100 followers, and some of them have millions. And we just talk about like therapy on YouTube. And then yeah, I just hired a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you like Google for coach and then hire the first one, or how did that work?
Oh man, I'm way impressed with her. She had a good like lead magnet generation system. She just went out and like, so I use Kajabi as my
Yeah.
course hosting platform, and she's a Kajabi expert, and she just offered to do free YouTube channel reviews, and I think she did them for like a few hundred people. And the channel review she did for me, she gave me like a couple of really great tips, and I was like, that's great. I've been doing YouTube a couple years and you just taught me some stuff. Okay. So then I hopped on a call with her and I really liked interacting with her. And then she's like, oh, here's my, really expensive program. And I'm like, okay, here's my money.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. What's a favorite online tool for building your company?
Hmm. I do love Kajabi. I love Canva. TubeBuddy is really helpful if you're trying to learn how to like optimize on YouTube.
Clear. What's the favorite city or place that you would love to move to?
Oh, I would love all of my siblings to move to me. I like Provo. I live in Provo, Utah. We've got mountains, we've got rivers, we've got spring, summer, winter, fall. We've got 5 national parks. I like where I live. There's a lot of places I'd like to travel, but if I could do anything, it would have my siblings with their kids nearby.
What's the biggest thing on your mind right now?
Hmm. Biggest thing on my mind right now. Professionally, business wise, we're shifting to a new membership and we are trying to move into short form creation. So those are the two things that I'm like constantly kind of thinking about and making. And then the other biggest thing is like my kids. I have 4 girls and they're all curly haired, spicy little
Love
redheads.
it.
Like they're a little bit wild. So they take a lot of my mental energy, which is good.
Personal section. How many hours do you work per week? Is that 15 hours per week, correct?
15, yeah.
How many hours do you sleep per night?
Oh, I go to bed at like 9 o'clock, and it depends on how much my baby wakes me up. But usually, I really like 8 hours of sleep. I really like 8 hours of sleep. You don't
What's the
always.
situation? Married, single, any kids? 4 kids, right?
Yeah, married, 4 kids.
Married, 4 kids. And what's your age?
39, turning 40 this year.
Final question. We also want to give some advice to the audience. If you could go back in time and have a conversation with your 20-year-old self, what's the best piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Who? 20-year-old self. I would say, slow down and enjoy college. Have fun while you can. And then I would also say, like, you have no idea what your potential is, Emma.
Hmm. Good. I like that. Um, this is Emma McAdam. She is a marriage and family therapist. She does mental health education with now over 1.7 million followers on YouTube. And she really was before a therapist, wellness therapist, therapy in all different ways, and then said, hey, you know what? Like, I'm so interested in educating people to help them with information to learn healing their condition. And so she actually went out on YouTube and became really big on there over the last few years, especially after COVID, helping people with anxiety. And she makes the content very easy to understand, and by making people learn something, increasing the success of people really understanding it and doing it. Price ranges for the courses $19 to $200. You can binge watch them. There's like 8 courses right now, so, and likely soon more. She's a 7-figure creator, will now take it to the next level, but actually also spend time with the family, because that's important. So the team is family plus a few contractors, giving back there as well to make sure people are compensated fairly. And the funnel is free content to ultimately then paid content, paid courses, free downloads. Yeah, I think she's thinking about shorter content, at some point doing more content once it gets easier with the kids. But until then, yeah, that's the business, and it's growing nicely. Really well done. Thank you for sharing your passion with us and taking us to the next level, Emma.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate your time.